thank y'all for coming. Thank y'all for joining us on the Zoom. Just in case you don't know me, my name is Maggie Caldwell, and I am the digital media specialist here at the college. I work in community relations. And just to give you a quick where all this came from, we have noticed a lot of mental health issues with not only our students, but our faculty, our staff, and just everybody. And so basically our reach out campaign was launched a couple of weeks ago, and we are basically starting conversations is where we're in the beginning of. So we're starting conversations with faculty, staff, students, and education. So there'll be more things coming out later all throughout the semester. This is Mental Health Awareness Week here at ICC. We have events all week, and there are 2 buildings lit up green, one on this campus, the new building, and one in Fulton, the Student Services building, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Week. So if nothing else, we're bringing awareness to what mental health is. So in all these conversations, we were blessed to meet Kim and Kecia. And Kecia.
It's okay. It's okay.
And they were, once we started talking to them and letting them know kind of what we're seeing, and what they were just, you know. So we are blessed today to have them to just give us a lot of great information, and I will let them kind of go through their bios because I do not want to mess them up. But this will be available recorded if you want to go back and get some stuff, and then the resources that they have, I will be emailing those out later on. So if you miss something, you can go back and catch it. So thank y'all for coming today.
You're welcome. Okay, my name is Kim Sistrunk, and I'm the director at the Pact program. It's a program with Lifecore Health Group. And this is Kecia Williams, and she's one of the therapists there. I did talk to Maggie earlier and said I'm not a bio person. Yeah. So, and plus for the hour that we have, I really wanted to utilize that time for what we were asked to come and do. I did send those to her. We both, have those. I think it is nice to know sort of a background of someone, but at the same time, I've been in mental health for 27 years, and I've worked from children to geriatrics, and most, though, of my career has been with adult psych. The program that we have, just to tell you a little bit about it, because it is a really great program, and it's kind of a secret. So a lot of people don't know about it. Even, I hate to even say this, I shouldn't probably say it, being recorded, but it's the truth. People even within Lifecore, because people think of Lifecore just being on Easton. People are familiar with that as what was Region 3. And then there's Midtown that's over in the old mall, but there are lots of clinics through Ashland, Amory, Houston,
Benton County.
We have chemical dependency services. We have the crisis stabilization unit, and we are actually located just right across the street out there on Briar Ridge. I don't know if you've ever noticed the 2 homes that are kind of sitting over there that used to be group homes. Mm-hmm. And so we occupy one of those buildings, and the other building is the crisis stabilization unit. It is a non-committal crisis stabilization unit. So we provide, the Pact is actually a model. It is a national model. It is throughout the United States and in about 7 other countries. And it was developed by the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. And it is a very novel idea in that it provides wraparound community-based services. And so these services include myself as a team leader, and my background is as a therapist, a clinical therapist. And we're blessed because the other Pact programs don't have what we have, in that we have really 2 functioning teams within the umbrella of what is a team. But we have 2 therapists, Kecia of which is one of those. We have 2 social workers. We have 2 registered nurses. We have a psychiatric nurse practitioner. We have an employment and education specialist, and we have a peer support specialist. And so we pretty much cover from A to Z. And in those wraparound services, we provide to those who have Medicaid, but who are also non-Medicaid. It is a grant program that is provided through the Department of Mental Health, and those dollars actually are federal dollars that are earmarked and come through the Department of Mental Health. This program started in June of 2015. There were 5 that started in the state of Mississippi, and we now have 10 in the state of Mississippi. And I wish that we actually had, we only serve Lee County. So, and Lifecore serves 7 counties. So if that says anything, that there are definitely more needed. The overall goal of the Pact programs are, we are to help people to maintain and sustain in the community and to help prevent rehospitalization and incarceration. And so that ultimately is our goal, and we have to be a well-oiled machine and a team that really steps up and steps into situations, because we go out, of course, into the homes and into the community, as well as providing services actually at the building. And there's been a lot of changes since I came, and we basically started out, there were less than 30 people when I came, and we have reached up almost to 80, and we're around 60 right now. Of course, COVID impacted everything, and that's going to be a little bit of what we talk about, along with some of the things that Maggie and those that we met with a few Fridays ago shared with us, that some of the faculty and the staff are experiencing, you know, with what your roles are here at the college. So, as you can see, I don't know if you can see the title of it, but it is Stress, School, and Self-Care, Mental Health Awareness, Challenges and Ways to Weather the Storm. And I do want this as much as possible, you know, to be interactive and to have you all involved. And hopefully then at the end we look to maybe if you have any questions or anything like that, that we can do that. In this introduction, where did I point it? No. I'm going to go ahead and start while I'm pushing. I'm going to go ahead while you're. So this was taken from a couple, we pulled several resources, and we looked to try to have them as relatable as possible to a community-based school level. But across the board, we saw a lot of the same things, whether, you know, granted, I mean, kindergartners from college are very different, but there were still a lot of just the same experiences through COVID and the pandemic. But in 2020, this was from SAMHSA, that as we shelter in place as a result of COVID-19, stress, anxiety, uncertainty, and fears about our future are high. School communities are impacted not only by the fears of the contagion, but also by broad, rapid shifts that are making to deliver equitable remote learning services seamlessly as possible. Educators, students, and families are adjusting to the ubiquitous 2020 version of homeschooling as parents balance between surrogate teachers while attempting to work their normal jobs, sometimes feeling inadequate in both roles. Families thrive to given the chance to slow down, stay home, spend more time forming deeper connections with one another. And then others have become overwhelmed and stressed by the sudden collision that school, work, and home, and uncertain how to best balance that all. I don't know if you're familiar with SAMHSA, but it is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And to the next. And y'all excuse me, I've had sinuses going on, so I hate to clear my throat. But basically, as far as we went through a roller coaster, all of us, and is it going to be okay if I move up a little bit, or is it going to, yeah, okay. That as we went through these roller coaster of experiences, knowing that in 2019, was that really normalcy or not? Was it normal? I mean, it's what we knew is normal, but then at the same time, what is normal? So our normal consisted of lots of difficulties, you know, pre-pandemic, you know, so we had lots of things that we were all experiencing. We experienced it, of course, providing services, and we had to do a lot of adapting, which into 2021, where I hit on this. But so you know, a lot of times when we think about normal in our lives, some things don't really seem like they're really normal. Is it normal really to have trauma, abuse, you know? So I think it depends on how we actually look at that and how we would define what normal is. But then as we moved into 2020, that became life to the, what did you say? To the squared magnification.
Yes,
but that incorporated isolation, fear, depression, stress, anxiety, financial, food, and home insecurity.
Can I interject right there?
Yeah, just.
In 2020, my name is Kecia. Hi. Like she said, I'm a clinical mental health therapist at Pact. Been there since,
We're a month apart.
yeah, we're
2017.
30 days apart when we got hired. So I am grateful that I have grew in that position and been there through a lot of changes. But in 2020, when we talked about the magnification of the things that we saw was little, think about, I thought about my own life. You know, because we stayed at home, and it's not that sometimes, like I would say, oh, I just wish I could stay at home and have nothing to do. Have you ever said that? But then when you was made to stay at home, it drove you to a whole different level of crazy. I have never built so many pieces of furniture in my life in 2020. I have bookshelves, all kinds of tables. So that was the magnification of what was already going on with us. And that's why that was named that for 2020.
But so when we think about, thank you.
You're
When I
welcome.
think about the mental health aspect of things, when I listed out anxiety and depression and a whole host of other things. And so people that were already experiencing that became double, triple, and people maybe that really didn't have some of that, it started to surface, and so it just became more, and then it grew with other people. Because fear and isolation, I mean, they can bring depression in and of itself. So, you know, the one thing that helped me, I'm a pretty optimistic person, and then I have 2 younger children as an older parent. They were 12 and 15, and so they were, of course, at the home, and we were trying to work, and we had clients who didn't really have a lot of services, and but they didn't have the ability to be able to, like, whereas we lead groups and do individuals and one-on-one, we then began having to do that, you know, through the computer for those that might have had access, which were very few, or through their phone. So we were trying to get them government phones to be able to jump on and do groups with us online. And it started out a little slow, but it kind of grew from there, and we had anywhere from about 10 to 15 people that would be able to do that, and we were still going, our staff was still going out to the homes and keeping their distance and masking, and those types of things, and the nurses were still having to provide those services too, injections, medications. And so when we think about all of the ways that we were so gravely impacted, it made everything seem like, what's the word I'm looking for? That being able to think of how we were going to move out and past this time, we had no idea what that looked like because, of course, we've never been through it before. And so how is it that you begin to reassure other people and say things in a positive light when you've never experienced it either? You know, I mean, that you could say, well, everything's going to be okay, and we're going to make it through this. And I mean, lots of people were losing their lives. And so all the while that, you know, they were experiencing the things that they were, your students, people, the students that you're teaching. And so tell me how did you all adapt very quickly? Because I know that there was already a lot of remote learning, but how did the traditional make that shift?
With nursing, that's not online. at all.
Mhm.
And so with our faculty, just have, they postponed spring break for like another week. So they had a week literally to learn how to use Zoom. And a lot of technology that they had not used before to transition to teach nurses. And then the amount of work to, you have to have face-to-face clinical, and our students have had enough face-to-face clinical to suffice for the semester, but you still had to give them clinical hours, so they put in a lot of time making case studies on, diseases that they
So you kind of had to adapt in that way of finding other things that were maybe not in the same way, but more applicable to that type of thing. So, anybody else? Oh, okay. But, so then what 2021 brought that we're talking about is adjusting, being able to motivate, not just, we were having to motivate ourselves, right? Because that's just the thing. I had to focus on what it was that we were there to do for the clients, but I was also, as the director, having to think of how to keep staff. I was sort of the buoy for staff, and trying to keep us moving forward. And thank goodness that, the staff that we had, they have big hearts and they are always ready to serve. And so that in itself was a blessing. But there continued to even be, as we were moving forward and trying to be motivated, that we still kind of had the fear factor because we were inundated with lots of information all the time. The trying to prevent or intervene when you're thinking of the hopelessness, that people feel, especially if you were directly affected, with someone who became gravely sick or beyond that. The impact of that and trying to manage, it was not easy. And then just the uncertainty of not knowing exactly how long, all of this was going to continue, and that we were going to have to, again, make some modifications and things like that in order to provide education, to provide mental health services, whatever it is that we may be doing for our profession. And helping other people, because you're doing the same thing. You're educating people, you're helping here at the school, and so there are lots of moving parts all of the time, and trying to come together to do that, sometimes even while having differences of thoughts and opinions and experiences, and so all of that rolled in together, sometimes is not the easiest thing to be able to manage. And then as we have moved where we are in 2022, and then looking onward, what Kecia and I talked about was more about bringing us to where we were sort of brought into this. And after we sat and listened, because it was about 2 hours long that we were in there, I think it was basically set up that we would be there for an hour, and it turned into 2 hours because there was a whole lot of information and a lot of things wanted to be said and be heard, and our eyeballs got really big, and just us trying to process all of it and think about everything it was that was covered in those 2 hours, and how were we going to cover what we needed to be able to provide something to you all within 1 hour. Because whenever I go and do something, I definitely want it to be something that is worthwhile and that you're actually leaving with something in sort of a tangible way. And so that is what we're going to hope to do here. So I'm going to let Kecia kind of talk about this next slide. Thank you.
So Ms. Kim kind of gave you a timeline from 2019 to present. And so what else happened through that period? For a therapist, when I heard the conversation that Ms. Maggie and the others talked about, we heard that students are not structured for traditional school, right? And the teachers are struggling. So what I heard as a therapist is, why is that student acting out? Why are they in the situation they're in? One of the things that me and Kim talked about was in the time of shutdown, the lack of technology for the students to prepare themselves for this next stage of life. Some of them had a lack of structure because they're the first time college students in a family. I come from a family of 5 and I'm the youngest, and I'm the only one that went to college. So as a present college student and being confined, it was difficult. It was difficult. It was a lack of structure. And then we have to look at what was going on with the student. Was there a lack of resources? A lot of our clients had a lack of resources, which caused anxiety, depression, which caused, and so on. So we had to look at, is the basic needs being met? Do this student have the capability to have structure with remote learning? Is the parents really involved? Is the parents able to be involved? And now they're sitting in a classroom and now y'all have them. You know, good luck with that, right? So now we have an issue. Now this is where the issue begins because they wasn't given a chance. So this is everything that happened during COVID affects these students in a different way. And I can tell you that with our program, we have some college students that's under me.
They go here.
That goes here. And God bless y'all. Because we have to be their cheerleader. And we have to be their, whatever they need, we have to encourage. And we have, because again, first time college student, who else are they gonna go to say, you know, I'm really having a hard time in that computer class. Well, what do you need?
Let me interject something, because I'm thinking about those two in particular.
Yes.
One, when they first started, I don't know currently, I would imagine, but they got a 4.0.
Yes.
And so, you know, we were, like she said, the cheerleaders. All the while, you know, the mother, you know, is a nurse. And, but unfortunately, she's been kind of she's been sabotaging, you know, and making that a little bit more difficult, not just for him, but then for us, because she's kind of continually undoing what it is that we're doing. And so, therefore, I mean, that's not a whole lot of support, but you would think that she would be proud, and I'm sure in some way she is, and would want that, you know, him to do well. There's a lot of other things to that, but ultimately, just knowing that sometimes that you have people like, that they're not gonna have people to motivate them and encourage them and praise them for doing. And so, unfortunately, just like it is with any teacher, it is you almost being that too, because we're having to be more than just therapists.
Yes.
And I know that's not what you want to come to the table with, but that's just the reality, and that's just the truth of the matter. I do a whole lot of things, whether from being a therapist to the director, that you wouldn't even think that are within that whatsoever for me to be doing. But I'm doing it because I care about them. And do I always have time to be doing that? Not really, not exactly. I'm just being honest. And I get stretched really thin. And that we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But, you know, as we're battling that, you know, we have lots of other battles, not just for those who are in school, but the same concept that they're continually, the people in their lives are continually sort of undoing what we're doing. So we're fighting against, you know, because they have a mental illness. Okay, well that doesn't mean that they're not intelligent, they're not capable, they're not able. Are there those that aren't able? Sure, yes. Absolutely. But you have those that most definitely are, and they're setting them up to use that as a handicap when they're fully capable of doing what they can do and need to do and need to be pursuant of doing in their lives. And so it is sort of the battle of where we are as therapists and other staff, as well as you are as educating and instruction and being amongst them, doing what you all are doing outside of instruction. And so all of that is super important.
It is. And like she said, a lot of them have been told or have been, a lot of them has been told because something is wrong or they're not functioning the way the rest of the family is functioning, they have been told they're less than. Most of the battle with us as therapists, and I'm sure as teachers also, is to build self-esteem, to let them know that they're capable, to let them know that they are more than what was told to them. And if you ever had to get a student, or like for myself, to get a client and to try to build their self-esteem, it is a full-time job. You can't never sleep on that. And what I have discovered is with my program is the lower the self-esteem, the bigger the behavior. The bigger the behavior, because this is all they know. This is all they've been told they could do. And so we're going to talk about de-escalation, but I had to learn firsthand how to be great at de-escalation. So I have,
Yes,
I used to, when I was learning this craft, I didn't know how to react properly. But I knew that this was what I wanted to do. So I have learned how to de-escalate. And first I had to learn it for myself. Because some things that you could do for me, and this is just me, is that if you do certain things, it would trigger me. Because I'm just taken off guard. But I've learned how not to be taken off guard no more. They said I have no emotion. I like that. Because then you can't get me off guard. I'm just numb to everything. You can say whatever, you can do whatever. I'm just sitting there like, okay.
well, it becomes easy to play on emotions. And so that doesn't matter, especially if it's an emotion of that they can see anger.
Mm-hmm. Because if our clients know that if I do that to Miss Kecia, and it's going to set her off, they would do it every time they see me. So I have to be guarded every day. And the best thing they love is a crowd.
Yes, an audience is always good.
So
like when you're in the classroom,
yes,
and you got 20 or 30, whatever your numbers are, you know, I worked at State Hospital, I've worked at behavioral health, and by human nature, for those who are seeking attention, an audience is always the best thing. So anytime that when she says the key word of trigger, and that's part of what we're going to talk with you about, I know that it would be possible that what you're looking for is how just to deal with them and what it is that they present, but I'm going to be honest with you, from being in mental health for all of these years, be 28 this year, you have to look at self first. It's not to say that you're doing anything wrong, but you can't manage a situation unless you're able to manage yourself. And they're always going to feed off of you very easily. And so they're going to feel what the temperature is of the situation, and they're going, it's constant reaction. They do something, you react. You react a certain way, they react. And all it does is go back and forth. And so one of the things on the, I know we had all of that listed, but you'll get that in the handout so that we can stay focused on what we need to. But what does self-awareness mean to you? And that is a question. What does that mean to you?
Like she said, knowing what triggers you.
And it is super, super important to know what your triggers are. Where do your triggers come from? Where do any of our triggers come? Not just you all. Where do our triggers come from?
Other people.
Life
Well,
circumstances.
life circumstances, things that we've experienced, things that we've been through. And these are not just things as an adult. These are things from the time that we're a child and we grow up. And people that have been in our lives that we've had difficulties with. Whether that's, family members, people that we've worked with, relationships that we've been in, whether that's friendships, whether that's dating, whether that's marriages, whatever, and especially when they have been unpleasant experiences. And so we have what's called transference and countertransference in therapy, where, for example, if I have a client that comes in and they remind me of someone, okay, I have to be aware of that. I have to be aware that they remind me of somebody that I went through a negative situation with for 10 years of my life. And in some ways could have been abusive, it could have been volatile. And they remind me of that person, and vice versa. Maybe I remind them of somebody that they had an unpleasant experience with. And so you're kind of dealing with those things off the bat. So let's think about whenever we were in school and I had 5 instructors, and word, gets around, or teachers when we were in K through 12 or whatever, well, oh, I love so-and-so and so-and-so, but now I'm not crazy about so-and-so, And granted, we're not here to, make everybody love us, because it is better to start out hard to get soft than soft to get hard. And we have to do the same thing. We have to do that same concept, because what will they do? You'll get run over. You'll get taken advantage of, and lots of other things. So, you have to be able to, maintain a certain sense of, what your boundaries are and what you're going to be looking for as you are trying to provide instruction. But when we think about what the triggers are, we need to continually be evaluating those, whether on a daily basis, a weekly basis, basically as needed. And there may be some people that we just have to be a little bit more mindful of that with. And so if we could just take a minute, if there's anybody that's here in the room, because I know we have a whole lot that are Zooming versus what we would be able to have if everyone were here. But what maybe has been an experience that you've encountered while being in the classroom that has presented a difficulty?
Not in the classroom anymore.
Okay. Nope.
And that a lot of issues.
You haven't had a lot of issues. Okay. Is there anything, Maggie, that you can think of that just sort of was brought to your attention so that those who have not know that this is going on and just the reason we're here?
Well, one thing that we experience a lot is students don't want to attend things. And I don't know if any of y'all have noticed this, but and I don't know if it's because they were in their house for so long and they just kind of got accustomed to that, but activities, they're just fine not going and not interacting. So therefore those social skills aren't being developed and encouraged and used to develop into professional skills later. So that is one thing that we're really trying to look at and see why and what can we do about it.
Okay. One of the things that was mentioned though when we came, and then you sent out the one question that you got feedback on, and so did everybody? Not everybody got what those responses were, so it was just sent in to us. Okay, so we got a couple of pages. You want to hold it up? Of things that were sent back to us, 2 full pages of things to the question. And what was the question?
The question was, what is one thing that you want to learn to help you manage your interactions with students?
Okay. Would that apply to you 3 ladies? So you're not around them very often, or? Okay.
You are. Right?
But you are.
Yes, and that came up, I think, in the conversation that if you have a student that does have a mental illness and something happens in the lobby and you're there, how do you handle the situation?
Yeah, there were a couple of specific scenarios of something that had happened, and so, and I'm just gonna say to sort of boost you is that you're not just housekeeping.
No.
Okay.
You're
What you
vital.
do is important, and you are around these people who are walking the halls, and your smiling face and your interaction with them is so important. You know, any interaction that we have with people is important. So we're not only just housekeeping or environment of care or whatever you want to say. Everybody plays a role when it is that the building sure wouldn't look like it does.
Yes.
Imagine if there were not you, how this building would look. Okay, so it is important.
One of the things that I notice with the students that are sent to my office is they have no coping skills
Okay.
at all.
Okay,
None.
so, okay.
It's all projection on somebody else.
Mhm.
They're not accountable and they have no coping skills.
And unfortunately, we have a generation of that. We do. We encounter the same thing.
Yes, I work along with Pact, along with our clients. So Ms. Kim said we had about, 60, 70? So we take 60 or 70, just take one of those clients. Then you add if they have children. Then add if they have parents. And then you add anything else that would
Aunt, uncle,
aunt,
grandparents.
uncle, spouse, that whole pie belongs to me. And so when you say coping skills or mechanisms, a lot of the adult children I see, and when I say adult, I mean early 30s to mid 30s, late 20s, they still live at home and they still get a pass for everything they do. Well, because, he has a diagnosis. So this is what I tell the parents. And I ask them, do you have high blood pressure? Do you have diabetes? Do you have any medical issues? And they say, yeah. Do you work every day? Well, yeah. So what's wrong with your child?
Great point.
What is wrong with your child that they can't get up and go to work? This generation behind me, would it be behind me now? Yeah, it probably is, because I'm about to turn 50, so I'm a little confused. The generation behind me has been given a pass because we felt like the generation ahead of us was too harsh. Our parents was maybe a little harsh, so we're gonna be cooler than our parents were. So now we're so cool that we have damaged or injured because our parents told us by any means necessary you would do. My mother didn't make it through school. I think she has a 9th grade education. She'll be 90 in October. But when you talk to her and when she pushes me, you would think she's been down the same road. She didn't give me any excuses. I didn't have too many chances to mess up. So that helped me. Even through my mistakes, it helped me. These kids don't get that same push. They get coddled. And so when you have a coddled child, and a coddled child will always come
It's
with
in their
parents.
teens and 20s.
Yeah, you always come with parents that will point the finger like, do something. Do something. Or I get them on the phone, Kecia, do something. What would you want me to do? Because when I tell them to work, you tell them not to. You fight against me. They fight against you. So it's almost like a tug of war. So what do you do in a tug of war? I just usually just kind of let go of the rope.
Because there's only, when you think about you all and ourselves, unless somebody comes to us on an outpatient commitment, which means that they're required by the courts to do our services, and they are held to that, or from that they would then return to state hospital or whatever is deemed in the outpatient commitment, but that's typically what it is. But when we don't have control, and I don't mean like being a controller, but not being in control of other people, you know, you're wanting to come in and just instruct, provide information, take tests, do what you do, and everybody goodbye, and we'll see you the next time class comes, right? But the thing is for those of you who's been teaching, what number of years have you been teaching? 15?
Too numerous to count. 16, I guess.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Okay. So a number of years, so in those 15 years, 16, what change have you seen from the time that you started till now?
Students are not accountable, they always have excuses, they're not as respectful. When I first started teaching, you know, they would never confront the teacher, but now.
Ooh, because
They'll go head to head.
Well, because there was respect, and if you don't have self-respect and you're not taught respect, you're not going to have respect. And none of that is about having excuses, but that is, again, the reality of what we're unfortunately dealing with.
Lack of initiative.
Mm-hmm.
There's no accountability.
And have no motivation. And so then you begin to, at least then my question becomes, from an academic standpoint, is, well, then why are you really here? I mean, why are you here?
And they complain like they want to spoon-fed everything, whereas 40 years ago when I went to nursing school, it was work to get what you know, to get to graduation.
And so to kind of step aside from what we have planned with what you all are saying is, how is it with your stating this that you feel like you all are able to make that different?
You have to restate your
Okay,
question.
so,
That's a long question.
okay, so, but with what you're stating, the not accountable, the no initiative, wanting it spoon-fed, okay, and that, I mean, is that, would you say, a good percentage of your students, half of your students that you have, or?
Well, it's not all students.
Sure, sure.
Not all students.
But what, I mean,
I have no idea. I don't teach, so I don't
Okay.
know what percentage of the students are from.
30%, okay? And so how does that 30% impact the other 70? And how does it impact you?
The ones that want to learn are going to come and learn. They put their work in.
It only, I guess it doesn't hinder in what I've seen. It
Frustrating.
doesn't hinder, it may be a little frustration, but the ones that are here to learn, they're all in. They're engaged.
And they're gonna find a way. So then that 30%, what types of things did they display? What kind of things are going on? I mean, did they actually do anything within the classroom, or did they just kind of sit there and you don't really know if they're doing anything, or you find out from a test, or?
Pretty much just they don't interact.
Okay. So, and some of this is not going to be anything we're going to certainly solve in an hour, but nothing more to help create awareness. And maybe, you know, some different things that you could look at. But when we go back to thinking about triggers and being mindful, you know, of yourself and that self-awareness, and that you are going to be sort of that guiding force in how to handle that situation. So, and I just thought of this, but when you think of somebody whispering, you're somewhere and they start whispering, what does the other person typically start doing? Whispering. Because you're like, why are we whispering? You know? So that's kind of, I mean, that's, I know, very small, but how it is that we are acting is how is going to feed into them and how they're going to be. So part of what Maggie and them were sharing, though, is that for those of you that are here, I don't know of those who are out there in Zoom world, may have other things if you're not really experiencing, but some have seemed to have verbal altercations. Okay, so we needed those people here.
So say you have a student that is just, I'm over it today, and gets up and walks out of class. Like, I think that's maybe a concern, or just bust up in tears. And so how do you react in that situation? How do you contain that situation and keep moving forward with the other people that are in the room?
Okay, and so to me, and I'll let you too, but to me, if it is the first one, they get up and they walk out, well, I mean, nobody has any control over them. But then how does the university handle the fact of, you know, is this a one and done time kind of thing, or is this repeated, you know, and it would probably be over time. You know, these to me would be things certainly for administration, you know, for you all to have a voice in that and what those experiences are, and figuring out ways to handle those type of things that are different than what it's customarily been 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Because if these things are presenting themselves, they're likely to not just stop. They're not going to go away. And pretending like they don't exist is not going to make them go away. So it's going to take addressing it at another level, because there's only going to be so much that at this level that you're able to do. I mean, because you all may not have the means in which to do certain things to manage those things that get out of control in a professional setting, okay? But now if somebody starts crying, okay, you know, and you're just one person sitting in a room, it may be, and it's hard to say because I mean, you're giving the example, but it's hard to kind of know, does the person just stay there and continue crying and you're trying to instruct, you know, or do you walk over to the person and draw attention to them? Is that going to make it worse? It's hard to know those things because, I mean, you may know that person a little bit, but you may not really know how they're going to react to that. So, you know, it would, I guess, just depend on how well the person knew that individual. You know, some of it my thought was when we were talking was kind of setting things out from the beginning. I mean, we're at the end of a school semester, or a year for some people, but you know, it's kind of outlining some of those things before school starts. And, you know, it's sort of setting the tone and setting the stage, you know, for things and for expectations. And I'm sure that is done. But maybe it is taken it a step further that, you know, being honest, you know, over the past X amount of time, whatever it's been, you know, that there have been, you know, things that have come up, difficulties that there have been, if things that you're experiencing, you know, become difficult while you're in here and you feel like you need to, you know, excuse yourself and there's something that you would like to talk with me about later. That way, at least you're putting it in their mind from the beginning instead of waiting until it happens. Because at that point, and you're sitting there with 20 or 30 people, you're kind of at a loss because you've got 29 other students, you know, sitting in there and not wanting to make a sort of a mountain out of a molehill, but then at the same time, do you want to just not do anything and then disregard what it is that this person is experiencing? So it's kind of a catch-22 of trying to figure out what is the best thing to do. But I think trying to start in a semester, you know, could it even be that you come up with something and say, you know, things have been, you know, really difficult, you know, there's definitely lots of changes and, you know, if you have things that you're experiencing that are difficult and, you know, I could help you with anything, you know, let me know. And you might just have something that's a handout to provide, you know, to them. Not that you are trying to be that fixer or helper or whatever. But sometimes when people can be shown that care and concern, it can really go a long way, just like I was saying with the smile and, you know, greeting someone. What do you?
We do groups where our numbers are between 15 and 20 people. And these are all adults with severe mental illness. So we are used to disruptions all the time. Some person would get up and just leave. Some people would get up and just start crying. We have had a few that had outbursts. And the one thing that I have learned that works for me is I stay completely neutral. I can't react to this person because I have the rest of them listening and wanting to learn. And the one thing, like she said, and I am very, 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 very clear, is I have a boundary in my group. Whenever I have a group, we have a boundary that we cannot cross. I can't cross because if I cross, I will become reactive. And if they keep pushing me to a boundary, then we have to have something set up. Either they go in we have another room that we call the small group room. I would just invite them there, or I would invite them to talk to another staff member. It has to be something in place. If they get up and go out, ain't nothing you can do. I mean, as a college kid, because I'm in my post-PhD program, if I got up and closed my computer, guess who's going to suffer? Me. Because I ain't going to have the material. I'm not going to know what's going to happen. I'm not getting my work done. So basically, I'm just hurting myself by getting up and leaving the room. Now, if you have someone who is clearly emotionally in distress, that's why we brought resources. That's why we have resources. Because there's resources, and I know that we talked about you have mental health available, but it's limited such sessions. So we have brought information to pass on because I know it's limited, but it takes a while to really get to a core of a problem if you want to talk about therapy. It's going to take more than a couple of sessions. Sometimes it takes 6 months to get to a core of an issue. And when I do, I feel like, oh my God, we finally broke through. And it's such a great feeling, but it takes a while. So that's what I would encourage somebody to do. If somebody leaves, you have no control over an adult. If somebody is emotionally in distress, offer them resources. But again, that needs to be in place in the beginning of a group or a beginning of classes or established before them.
We can move to the next one. But you were talking about, and I don't know your name, but you were talking about coping skills. And so, coping skill, we're not born with coping skills. How is it that we learn and come to have coping skills? Because that word is, I mean, you're correct, and that is a term we use, but it's thrown around a lot. You know, they don't have coping skills, and we do the same thing. But how is it if we're not born with coping skills that we learn coping skills?
From parents, from teachers, family members.
Sometimes through adversity, through trauma, we learn how to cope.
And that goes into what was on the previous slide talking about resiliency. I mean, some people are just more resilient than other people. And that goes along too with the fact that you're not born having and knowing resiliency. It's a learned experience as well as observed. And so the same can be for learned helplessness, you know, or entitlement. You know, these are all things that are learned. And whether it's being intentionally taught or inadvertently, it's just something that's occurring based on how someone's being raised. But then again, you all don't have control over that, you know. You're doing the best that you can with what you have, just as we are. But when you think about the importance of your own self-care that helps you to be able to manage some of these maybe difficult situations, I know that self-care has become one of those words out there like mindfulness and relaxation and deep breathing, and those things are real. They are real. And that is just as important as knowing what it is that your triggers are and being able to take care of yourself and having self-awareness. It's kind of like when I've worked with people and knowing that we all kind of have this idea of a bank account, that we're a bank account, and we have X amount in the bank account. And we have people continually who are either making deposits or they're making withdrawals, okay? And if most of what you're experiencing are withdrawals, what happens after you have lots and lots of withdrawals? You're empty, you're depleted, you're bankrupt, okay? And so when you don't have other people, if you're a giver and people learn that you're a giver and they become a taker, and you let, they're gonna continue to do that. And so it goes back to setting those boundaries and knowing where, people knowing where it is that you stand as far as how they can handle situations whenever they're in the classroom. But you being able to maintain your self-control because of the self-awareness that you have and knowing what your triggers are and being able to what we refer to as self-regulation. Being able to regulate yourself based on what it is that is happening at the time. I mean, you have a student who is irate. You have somebody that goes off out here in the front in the common area and you're out there. You know, how is it that you handle that situation? And so when we talk about coping skills, mindfulness, de-escalation, and learning how sort of to reframe how it is that we say things, all of those things are so important. And don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but there is actually a de-escalation process. And so this is something that we learn and we do instruction for, that we have to learn in working with clients, and we have to go through this every 2 years. But when you look at what is the crisis cycle, if you have someone who you're experiencing out of control and they don't have the ability to be able to maintain themselves in the moment. And the thing is when we talk about triggers, maybe something in the class, I mean, you wouldn't think it, you don't know it, but maybe there's something in there that's happened that's a trigger. Maybe it's something that was said, maybe it was the way it was said, maybe it was somebody looked at him, maybe somebody next to him said something. I mean, there could be a whole host of reasons, you know, that there's a trigger. And you may or may not know what that would be at the time, but you're then faced with the situation, okay? You don't know what's happened. So, I mean, you're looking at where that person is and what the stimulus or the trigger was. You're trying to be able to engage them, to be able to listen to what it is that they may be sharing with you, so that you're trying to prevent this from further escalating. So the time that you spend with them and trying to help them manage themselves, and that's not the easiest thing, but the way that you speak to them, the tone, how it is that you verbalize your care and concern can go a long way to de-escalating. Because otherwise, if it's that's not happening, you're then probably escalating them to go into a crisis. Unless it may be that they happen to already be, you know, in one. But the goal is that if they are up here when you would encounter them, your goal is to be looking at de-escalating them. And so, again, it's the same here as you're trying to keep them from going into this crisis, as well as in this de-escalation. Both of these are the same, that you're trying to engage them to help them to stop and think about. And some of that is reframing, some of that is redirecting. You know, maybe it is talking about something else for the moment instead of, because maybe if you're talking about what it is that's going on, for some people that could make it even worse. And you're gonna know that really quick. I mean, you're gonna know if you're talking about something that is active and it's a trigger for them, you're gonna know that. Because they're gonna get worked up even more. And so you are looking to de-escalate them to get them to a point of being stabilized in a situation. And then at that point, you know, when you've gone through this whole crisis cycle, I mean, at the end of it, everybody's drained. So you're kind of exhausted. And so I don't know that all things, that maybe have occurred in the classrooms or that people have experienced here within instructing in a classroom, thank you, that it's really reached this point, but, at some point, if the things that were presented to us are not managed on a certain level, it's hard to say, of what can happen. You're trying to prevent the worst case scenario from happening. And so that is why something like this is so important, so that you can kind of head things off before they become even worse. So, maybe those of you that are not teaching, you could be outside of a classroom, you could be walking down the hall and something happens, You never know where you might be whenever something presents itself. And you might be that person that helps because maybe that instructor is a trigger for that person, and someone else coming into that situation could help de-escalate that person. So, but utilizing sort of the concept that we do in therapy for solution-focused therapy. Anybody ever heard of solution-focused therapy? So what it basically is three things. You can have what's a win-win, a win-lose, or a lose-lose. And so in these kind of situations, when you think of being like the therapist, and I'm not saying that we do or you do, but sometimes it can be thought of this way. If you have a person who is looking to be in a position of power or in a position of control, is that it's always going to end up being a win-lose situation. You're winning, they're losing. But in these kind of situations that you encounter and are faced with, you're going to want to look to have a win-win situation as much as possible. Where both of you come out, from where it started, that, you're kind of getting what you want or need as well as that they are. That you're kind of both meeting in the middle. And that there's a little bit of give and take. And so, understanding that that doesn't work in all cases, all of the time, nothing does, and everybody is different. And that's why there's lots of different treatment modalities, is that all things don't work with all people all of the time, okay? So you have to kind of figure out that person and build that rapport and figure out what it is that's going to work best.
Yeah, well, I was going to start any de-escalation, transferring a sense of calm. I have been told I have a calming voice, and I appreciate. But when I am in a group, I have had clients, and maybe your students or people that you've seen just in passing. Have you ever been to a family's house that all they do is scream? Do you know family members, all they do is yell, their voices at 10? Are they loud? Or they yell? Or to show love, they might argue and fight. You might have a neighbor like that. You'd be like, why do they keep yelling like that? And so I have clients that do that. And they yell, they jump up and down on my couch. I've seen, like, you would be amazed what these eyeballs have seen. And so while they're doing that, I am completely neutral. I'm very quiet. And then they look at me and be like, are you gonna say anything? I said, what do you want to talk about? What you want to talk about? And so I have to remain calm, because if I got just as excited as they are, then it's not going to be a win-win anymore. Now we're looking at a lose-lose, because they're looking for that same energy level, and so I'm trying to transfer calm over to them so I stay calm. And sometimes I set the mood in my office. I have a corner light. I have like smells or aromatherapy. So when they come into my space, they calm down. And sometimes that's for me too, especially if I had a rough day before, the lights is real dim, and I set the mood for my clients when they come in. They be like, oh, so you're relaxing today? I say, yes, I am. And so sometimes you have to set the calm. And you will hear me say boundaries a lot because I believe boundaries gives you a border. Everything in life have boundaries. If you drive up and down the street, if there was no yellow lines, we'd all be dead. So we have to have boundaries because I need to stay in my lane at all times. So if your classroom or if your school or if anything does not have clear and concise boundaries, that could cause issues. Ms. Kim she is very adamant about, we call it staff splitting. So structure for even adults is great, but structure for young adults is better. And that helps set the guidelines for them when they enter school, setting clear and concise boundaries. You know, resources also. Respect a person's space. Sometimes we have to stay about this far apart when they're upset. The worst thing you could do is walk up to somebody and they are already mad. You asking for a fight. When somebody having a behavior, the first thing we do is get the other clients out of their space. So we have had this a very long time, and there's no wood around here to knock. So,
It wasn't quite like that when I came though.
Right.
There was a lot of work that had to be done.
So
it takes time.
It takes time, and now we are all on one page. Because if there's structure and consistency, it works better for us. Because it makes more work for y'all and for us, where there's no consistency, right? Okay, so
Let me interject something.
go ahead.
So when, I'm going to segue off of that. So when she talks about that, we're talking about in the classroom. So you have a syllabus, you have an outline of what it is that you're going to cover, okay? And it'd be great if, you know, at least when I was a traditional student, everybody just kind of walked in. And I honestly, after 7 years of college, I mean, both were I did 2 years ICC Fulton, and then the rest was at Mississippi State. And I don't remember anything like that. People just came into the classroom, you just got your stuff, you did your stuff, you left, you came back, you took your tests, you did your book reports, research, whatever. You didn't have really all of this stuff that is presenting. And so I think it's just presenting any and everywhere across the board. It's not just here, it's not just with us, it's a little bit of everywhere. But you have the syllabus, and the thing is, but the syllabus doesn't prepare you for these kinds of things. And so I think it can be hard for people, whether instructors or people that have been in their career or in their field for a long time, and you reflect back on and think, oh my gosh, and it used to be like this, and it was never like this, and you know, you're always reliving those good times. You know, you remember those times that were good, and here we are now, and this is just all this stuff, and I can't teach, and there's always something going on. And so I think when the syllabus is done, maybe you have an attached page, you know, that has, you know, in the event, you know, that you find yourself, you know, as we are going, you know, through the class, of something that, you know, is a reminder or that could be difficult for you, you know, feel free to let me know, or if you feel like that you need to excuse yourself, whatever it may be. But if you're having those as issues, I would rather handle them from the beginning, from the onset, instead of in the midst of when it is that they're happening. And it gives them sort of a guidance as to how to handle themselves in particular situations. And you're kind of giving them a permission, so to speak, because I have to outline it at the beginning of the year, throughout the year. You know, people are always wanting to push the bar a little bit, and I have to circle back around and say, let's go back through this again, because these are things that we are not going to be able to do here. And if this is what you're going to look to do whenever it is that you come, then you need to give consideration about not coming, because this is the goal when you come here. And so, and there's always a nice way to say that. You don't have to be a smart aleck. You don't have to, kind of be that trigger with what you're saying, but that they know that there's a purpose and a reason that you're here, and it's not to do all this other stuff. That's at least one way to think about it. I know that we're out of time. It was really hard. We don't have that many slides, honestly.
We don't.
We were cutting and cutting and cutting. But just let me say,
Make another one later.
let me just say one thing, is that when you're talking about visioning, I know that's on the next slide, but it can be important in times of crisis and uncertainty, when people are in pain, confused, uncertain, feel despair and hopelessness, that they're desperately seeking meaning and hope. And so when we consider education, and the vision for schooling includes more than the student's academic instruction, there is ample evidence that, in quotes, learning in general happens best in a warm, supportive atmosphere in which there exists a feeling of safety, being supported and cared about, closeness and connection. And there are always going to be those people, even when you are doing these kinds of things. So it's not the end-all be-all for that. You all will get these, but we go into about self-efficacy, as well as the critical self-care and listening to your own self, your body, recognizing certain signals of unnecessary stress. Maybe you had something that happened at home. Maybe you've had something going on in your home, and somebody does something in your class, and it's just, it's setting the stage for disaster. When you're not able to kind of collect yourself and kind of know what it is that's going on between here and here, of what's in your world, can easily get carried over, but the same thing happens to that student. It gets carried over, and it just, it kind of snowballs from there. But employing strategies to manage your emotional state is going to be important. And then on this last one, things to think about, that make no mistake, emotional work called effective labor is difficult. It's work that's associated with managing one's own feelings when things are going to pieces around you, when others are upset, frightened, or angry. And so we can put ourselves through secondary trauma in supporting students, colleagues, family, friends, while trying to carry on ourselves and maintain our own well-being. And so we have this beautiful handout that Kecia found. It has lots of good stuff in here, and I've given a hard copy to Maggie that it would not let me send it. I don't know if it was the size, but I suggested maybe that she could scan it and then, send it to you all. Maybe having, things available. I don't know if you have like a place where you could have something available. We could always look to get you, more things that are from Lifecore, knowing that you all have somebody, but if it's that somebody needs something beyond that, there are lots of services that Lifecore provides. So.
Thank y'all so much. Y'all have and to all of y'all in here, thank you for making the effort to be here.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
on Zoom, thank you. And everybody that attended, I will send out all of the information. And if you have anything, any questions or any comments or suggestions or any of that, please email me and let me know, because today started a conversation and we'll probably start many more conversations, I hope.
Yeah.
So if we accomplish that goal today, then we're doing good.
We won't go away by ignoring it.
So
It's not going to go away by itself.
I thank y'all, and
If
please
you didn't get
encourage-
anything.
Yes. Please encourage your students to attend the events this week, and we also have a wellness week coming up at the end of the month through the fitness center and student activities, and they're doing activities at all 3 locations. And so please encourage them to do those. The more that they can get out and do, I think the better that they will feel and be. So thank y'all for coming today. And like I said, any questions, comments, concerns, anything, please email me and let me know because we're always open. Thank y'all.